Welcome to this week's Talking Point, where we help ordinary South Africans become savvy and knowledgeable investors. And you might be asking how? Well, by having the right team and the right structures in place, you can start investing in one of the most steadfast investment sectors over the past few decades. And that is, of course, property. But just investing in property is obviously not enough. So like I mentioned before, if you don't have the correct structures in place, you'll be putting yourself and your investments at risk. And the same goes for your team. Now, without the right team of people on your side who understand the intricacies and the legal requirements around property investment, you'll also never get the best possible benefit. So that is where the Wealth Masters Club comes in, but a little bit more detail on that at the end of this video. Today's talking point is focused around the topic of tax, and in particular, how you can get the most tax benefit from working from home. Now, COVID-19 has brought a number of challenges, of course, but it's also brought around a number of opportunities. And if you have the right team looking out for you, then these opportunities are, of course, endless. Now, one of these particular opportunities that we're going to have a look at today is the tax benefits you can get from working from home. So to talk a little bit more on the topic, please welcome one of our accounting specialists, Veronica Stiglingh. Veronica, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys having me. It's going to be a fun topic.
Fantastic. We love saving tax, so that's why we all agree it's a fun topic. Now, Veronica, you wrote an article last week about what can be claimed from working from home. So I just want to go back to the basics and say, or ask the question of who can actually claim for work from home office expenses, and what are the sort of guidelines that are currently in place from SARS?
So any person that is currently allowed by the employer or has a letter from the employer that states that they can work from home, that in that letter it has the dates and the reason why they're working from home, they can actually claim those expenses. But SARS do have some requirements. They do require that you work at least 6 months during that tax year from home, and you need to have that letter, like I did say earlier, and you need to have a specific area where you work specifically, or it's exclusively just for trade and work. So you can't do anything else in that area. It's just your home office. So in that same saying, that the expenses that you use for that current area in that property, you need to hold or have a schedule for. So if you don't have that schedule, SARS can require that, and if you can't supply that, SARS will not allow those expenses. And always make sure that you have those supporting invoices of all those expenses, otherwise SARS can also disallow those expenses.
Now, Veronica, you speak quite a lot about the expenses that are claimable. Let's look at it. If the money was spent on converting a space, let's say, for instance, a garage was used to convert into a home office, are those renovation costs also claimable as part of your tax return?
Well, this is where it gets a little bit tricky regarding those expenses, because it depends on what the taxpayer wants to do with that property in a while. So if they do plan on selling that property, it's probably best not to claim those expenses, for it will have an impact on your capital gain tax. If the taxpayer decides to never sell that property, then you can claim those expenses like normal, because it is claimable for your office, so because it's used for your office then.
And then, okay, this might be a bit of a technical question, but how are those deductions calculated when it comes to the space being used?
When we calculate those expenses, we need two things. We basically need the total square footage of the property, and then the total square footage of the area that is exclusively used for trade and work purposes. So when we go into the calculation of it, we actually take the square footages that we use exclusively for work, divided by the total square footage of the property, and then we multiply that by 100. That will give you a certain percentage. So let's say I have a property of 600 square meters, and I only use 36 square meters of that property for my trading purposes or work. Then I'll take that 36 square meter footage and I'll divide it by 600, multiply by 100, and then I'll get 6%. So when I have an expense, let's say cleaning, my cleaning expense for the year was 2,000. If I take that 2,000 multiplied by 6, I will get 120 Rand that I can then claim for home office expenses.
Okay, I am more a creative person, so when it comes to numbers, I am completely lost. So I'm glad I've got an accountant who can help me with those sort of calculations. But just let's go a little bit more broad stroke and say, if someone works from home full time, other than a dedicated office space, can any other space within that home fall under the claimable tax space?
Unfortunately, when it comes to that type of situation, SARS is very strict. It is not let's say you are on the phone with the clients in the kitchen. It is seen as work, but unfortunately you can't add that to your square footage that you're actually using for your trade, exclusively for your trade and work purposes. So SARS will not see that as part of it. It's only exclusive to the area that you do about 80% of the work and trade.
SARS generates auto assessments at the moment for a number of citizens. So how would you then factor in the home office deductions? Are those done automatically, or would you need to go into the back end and actually add those as additionals?
Look, I think it's a very good thing that SARS started the auto assessments. I think it helps a lot of people. But unfortunately, when it comes to things like the home office expenses, they do not have access to that information. SARS only has the information that is supplied by any third parties like your employer or your investments or any banks. So they won't know what expenses you used or that you can claim or that you're in fact working from home. So basically the taxpayer will have to go and amend that auto assessment. And you'll see in the beginning on the question wizard, there's a question that asks, is there any expenses that you want to claim other than the questions that was supplied earlier? You'll tick on that yes, and then this will open a new section for you. And in that section, you can then fill in all the expenses you want to claim.
Fantastic. And now, Veronica, last question. We are recording this at the end of June for those who watch in the future, but what are the upcoming tax deadlines for those who are currently watching?
So for this current tax year, your personal tax, your normal personal tax, the season starts the 1st of July and it will end by the 24th of October 2022. Some of you will see that the tax season is already open. This is for the early birds. So if you're ready and you have time, you can already submit your tax returns. For your provisional taxpayers, your normal time is usually around the 31st of August. That will be your first round of submissions. And your second round of submissions will be around the 31st of January.
Fantastic. Veronica, thank you so much for your insights. I think we all learned a lot here. But if you're watching at home and you'd like a little bit more detail, or if you might have an additional question on the topic, please send them through to services@wealthmastersclub.com. And that email address will be in the description below. And now let's talk a little bit about the exciting part. As I mentioned at the start of our talking point, if you want to get the best out of your investments, then you need to have the right structures in place with the right team that will guide you through that process. But understanding the right method is always that first step to creating your financial independence. So if you have not already done so, and we get thousands of these requests every week, please register for the free online training, which takes place this weekend, where you can stream our 2-hour training special from Saturday morning at 9 a.m. until midnight on Tuesday. Now there you'll learn all about setting up the correct structures to protect your assets, as well as which properties are the best investments and how to be smart with your taxes and so much more. The link for that is in the description below, so we will see you this weekend. But for now, Veronica, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, and we hope to chat to you very soon.
It's a huge pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Great stuff. And everyone at home, we will see you again next week. Bye-bye.